Good evening, everyone. I'm here to provide an update on the protests that have occurred today in the city and to say they concluded shortly after 6 p.m. tonight. These protests, as everyone would most likely be aware, come on top of weekend protests. We saw the so-called Freedom Rally on Saturday, as well as a protest yesterday outside the CFMEU offices in Melbourne, where there was assaults occur, and we even saw a kicking of a dog occur during that protest. Today we saw large groups of men moving around the city, predominantly men. They made their way towards the Westgate Bridge. They were involved in a rolling series of confrontations with police right throughout the city from 10 a.m. this morning, as I say, for the next 8 hours. Apart from the obvious that these selfish individuals have potentially placed themselves and others at risk of contracting COVID-19 through their illegal protest, this is other criminal conduct they've been involved in as well. There's no doubt they've breached the Chief Health Officer guidelines in terms of gatherings, but we're now assessing the extent of what criminal activity has occurred throughout the day. This was a really challenging environment for police. It was a crowd that was around 2,000, we estimate at this stage. This was a very large and very angry group. Any police force anywhere in the world would have been challenged by a snap demonstration of this nature, and it was a challenging and confronting environment. We chose to prioritise public safety throughout the day so that we could ensure community members weren't injured. And fortunately at this time, we're unaware of community members. I mean, we know that a reporter was injured, was attacked multiple times, and we have 3 police officers who were injured. But other than those injuries, general members of the community at this time, as I've been made aware, have not been injured. We became aware of this protest late yesterday, and as a result, we mobilised over 500 police. They came from different areas, public order response teams, general duties. We had the air wing up, mounted branch, critical incident response team, and a whole range of areas. As I've outlined earlier, we saw an assault, an attack a couple of times on one of the reporters. We saw 3 police officers injured throughout the event. No one, it doesn't matter whether you're a reporter, whether you're a police officer, anyone, no one should come to work and then suffer an injury. Totally unacceptable. We saw property damage to police cars. We saw large groups of men, angry men, converging on police in vehicles, threatening them, large crowds threatening them and committing criminal damage on cars, throwing objects. We saw flares lit, thrown at police. We saw bottles thrown. We saw rocks thrown. This was totally unacceptable conduct. We conducted over the day 62 arrests. That's the number we're at this time. Investigations are ongoing, as I have said, and we will continue to investigate and determine what other offences people have committed, and we will seek to arrest other people and hold them to account for this disgraceful conduct. Crowds like this, they're for cowards. Cowards who seek to hide their identity and conduct other activities, to do other things that if they were by themselves, they wouldn't have the courage to do. The type of activities committed by these people today, by these cowards, was disgraceful. We deployed a range of crowd control options. Part of our crowd control equipment were pepper ball rounds. We deployed smoke rounds. We deployed foam baton rounds. And we also deployed stinger grenades, which contain small rubber pellets. These obviously were necessary to use to control crowds of this nature. I think it needs to be said, though, it wasn't just the police who were subjected to this. We saw the conduct of these thousands of people, these protesters, as they went up on the Westgate Bridge. I can't imagine what it would have been like to be a citizen, a community member just inside their car sitting there. How frightening that must have been. How scary that must have been to have this mass crowd of 2,000 people going in and out of their cars, converging past them. We're aware that some cars were damaged as well, and we're investigating that. That's so inconsiderate. When you think of what they've done, people people with kids in the car potentially, women, children, adults just going about their business, essential workers, and all of them placed in threatening circumstances. But apart from just being in threatening circumstances, the inconvenience that these people have caused to the city through their ill-considered conduct. Again, it just reinforces the disgraceful conduct they have displayed and their preparedness to hide in the crowd. We have intelligence that there may be repeat protests tomorrow. My message is really clear. Stay away. No one benefits from this type of conduct. We will be out in force again. I assure you of that. I'm not going to disclose what our tactics will be tomorrow, but they will be different. Please, I implore you, do not do this. Do not come into the city. It achieves nothing. The risk of COVID-19 spread is increased substantially. The risk to public safety is increased substantially. Please just stay home. We do not want a confrontation. People need to step back, think about what they've done, and consider in the cool, hard light of day, should I really be doing this again? And the answer is clearly no. Stay home, I implore you. I'm happy to take questions.
Could today have gone better from a policing perspective?
I will debrief today. Clearly it was a very challenging day when you have a rolling group of angry men of up to 2,000 people set on confronting police and without any real leader travelling in all different directions around. It's one of the most challenging environments that we could face, and you add to that flares, as I've said, rocks, those type of things being thrown, bottles being thrown. When you couple all of that together in a dynamic, threatening, scary environment, it's too early to sit here and say, could that have gone better? We'll review our tactics as we always do. We'll be agile and we'll adapt as we need to.
The three officers who were injured, how are they doing?
Yeah, the three who were injured, two senior constables. One of them rolled their right ankle, and so a relatively minor injury, but nonetheless an injury. One had a hyperextended right knee, another senior constable, and a first constable was hit by a rock on the shin. Again, thankfully, fairly minor injuries, but nonetheless injuries they should not have sustained if not but for the conduct, the illegal conduct of this illegal protest.
Seeing the protesters walk and march over the Westgate Bridge, how was it able to get to that point that they were on the freeway marching over the bridge, apparently out of control? How did that happen?
The protesters, as I've said, have moved through a range of different streets in the city. They've taken a range of different directions, and it is very difficult for any police organisation anywhere in the world to control a group of 2,000 angry people who are intent on going somewhere. You would need thousands of police to do that. It's just not practical. And so we had a significant number there. We had over 500 police there today, and those police did a fantastic job in really challenging circumstances. It may not appear that way at the outset to people saying, well, why didn't you just stop them? But when you've got a couple of thousand angry people who are traipsing around town, intent on confronting police, intent on going anywhere without any leadership, throwing bottles, throwing lit flares, throwing rocks, confronting people, chasing at people, it defies logic for any police organisation or anyone to be able to respond to that and control the direction of the crowd. So we'll review our tactics, as I said. We'll assess whether we can do better. And there's always room for improvement. Every time we get engaged in one of these activities, we'll continue to be agile and we'll do what we need to respond.
With the arrests, are you able to shed any light on whether they were all construction workers?
I don't have the knowledge as to what the occupations were of those 62 who were arrested. It is, at this stage, early days. A couple of those were for assaulting police as well. The vast majority were for breaching the Chief Health Officer directions, and they'll get a $5,500 fine, or $5,452 each.
What do police know about the composition of the protesters today? Were they all actually construction workers, or were they members of far-right anti-vax, anti-lockdown?
It's too early for me to be able to say what the composition of those protesters were. Clearly, there were some people in there who were, gave the appearance of being tradespersons. Whether they were construction workers, what their role is, or whether it was others who moved in and just took advantage of it. Our intelligence told us that we were seeing people from the construction industry, that we were seeing tradespeople and others who joined from what was the weekend protest in terms of the Freedom Rally. But we need to sit back and analyse that and determine what the full composition of that was.
We've seen that there's a video doing the rounds of two of these tradies appearing to take cocaine in the process of marching. Is drug use something that you guys saw throughout the course of the day, and is that a concern that they may have been under the influence of things other than alcohol?
I don't know what they're under the influence of, other than anger. The reality for me is I haven't had any reports to me of any drug taking at all during the day. I'm aware of the so-called footage of them of taking coke before the event. And I don't know whether that's factual or not, but if that's factual, I think it goes to demonstrate the type of cowardly approach we're talking to if people have to take some drugs to get the courage to come up and do what they normally wouldn't do. No, I'm not aware of any drug taken through the event. I believe there's alcohol consumed, but other than that, I'm not aware of any other substances.
In your view, was this a protest or was this a riot?
It's clear that this was not a protest. This was at times an affray, at times a violent disorder coming together. We'll certainly investigate this to determine whether we can lay much more serious charges to these people once we identify them. And if we're able to do that and reach the necessary standard of proof, we will charge them, because I want to hold anyone, especially the primary offenders, to account for their conduct. We should not see this occurring in Melbourne.
Have police considered shutting down the public transport systems again, or taking some of the measures they took on Saturday to prevent people entering the city and providing police additional powers to search people, those kind of things?
We are considering a range of options, have considered a range of options, and will continue to do so. Public transport was one of those. I'm not intending to invoke that at this time. We also consider our options in terms of, under the Control of Weapons Act, whether we declare an area, a declared area where we can search people randomly. I'm not going to disclose at this stage whether we'll be doing that tomorrow or not. As I have said, our tactics will be different, and I just urge people, do not come in if you're considering it.
How many police officers will be there tomorrow? Will there be a significant boost on today, and will CERT be there?
Our critical incident response teams will be there tomorrow. Our public order response teams, all of our specialist areas will be there. We will have a significant number there. We'll have at least 500 police. How many more than that, I'm not going to go into at this stage, because we are still in the planning for that. But we will have a significant number of police there.
Does it make it harder to police the fact that these groups appear to be leaderless with no direction?
Yeah, it does make it very hard to police when groups such as this don't engage with us and are largely leaderless and seem to just be intent on random violence and inconvenience and threats. So yes, it is a very difficult, very challenging policing environment when you have a protest such as this, especially with thousands of people who are breaking the law and come in to do so.
We heard them chanting every day, every day. How concerning is that for Victoria Police, that this could not just be tomorrow, but maybe the next day and the next day as well?
Look, it's concerning when we have any single protest at all. The fact that people are considering having a potential rolling series of protests, well, we'll see how that goes, but we will do what we need to do. We don't get to pick and choose what laws we enforce. As I've said many times, protest, when it's allowed, Victoria Police is very happy to facilitate that, and we do with a whole range of issue-motivated groups, and we do it peacefully and it's done properly. That's not what we're seeing here. The Chief Health Officer has put in place directions that make this illegal to do so. He's done that for the health of Victorians, and so that's why I urge people, do not come in. We don't get to pick and choose which of these laws we enforce. We're enforcing those that the Chief Health Officer has put in place for the safety of the community.
Today, police used a range of measures. You mentioned smear grenades, pepper balls, smoke rounds, etc. Did police think that they were effective? And are police considering tougher measures if demonstrations continue?
Yes, when we use the crowd control equipment today, it was certainly considered to be effective when we were using it. We have to take in a range of considerations prior to using it, and we do so. We consider the entire environment, and on occasions we may not use it and don't use it because we're considering other members of the public. We have a range of other options, which I'm not going to step through now, but I've made it perfectly clear to my operational police commanders, if it is necessary to use crowd control equipment to ensure the safety of the community and to ensure the safety of police, then if we're going to maintain public order and that's what we need to do, then that's what we need to do.
Final question? Sorry, given the criminal behaviour that was displayed today, do you think that workers who attended the protest, should they be allowed to work on government projects in the future?
It's not a matter for me as to whether people here who've been engaged in the protest, if we identify that they are tradespeople where they can work in government protests, that's a matter for government. It's a matter for me to hold people to account for their criminal conduct, and that's what we'll do.
And of the people arrested today, the 62, were any of them known to police for being involved in kind of far-right groups that you've hinted at before, or the anti-lockdown movement?
Yeah, I don't have the level of detail as to the backgrounds of those 62 who have been arrested to date, so I'm sorry I can't tell you that at this time.
Protesters say they're going to do this every day if the ban on construction remains in place, which is 2 weeks. Are police concerned about resource allocation and continuing to meet the demand of this protest?
There's no doubt that this places a demand on police resourcing. That's obvious to anybody. We're involved in a whole range of other essential COVID-19 responses and activities, so this places a demand on us. But we're a very big organisation, we're very well resourced, and we will do what we need to do in terms of prioritising where those resources need to go. The priority for me is, always has been and will be, community safety and public order. So we will be focusing on this and we will redeploy the resources we need. Okay, thank you.